Welcome into OutKick the show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you are having fantastic Mondays wherever you may be across this country or indeed around the world. I hope you enjoyed Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday football as much as I did. Looking forward to watching Vikings-Rams tonight. And we'll be diving all in for that one. I've got some prize picks for you that I'm about to tell you because it's playoff time. Don't miss out on the last few weeks of football action with prize picks where you can win up to 1,000 times your money. Prize Picks even offers MasterCard now for quick and easy deposits into your account. You can download the app today. Use code OutKick, $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Here are my picks for tonight. Justin Jefferson, more than 1/2 rushing or receiving touchdown. I also think Justin Jefferson is going to have more than 6.5 catches. I think, however, that Sam Darnold is going to pass for less than 267.5 passing yards. And I like Matthew Stafford to have more than 1.5 passing touchdowns. So Stafford more on the passing touchdowns, Jordan Jefferson more on touchdowns, rushing and receiving, and on catches, and Sam Darnold less on his passing yards. You go to prizepicks.com, you use code OutKick. When you play $5, you get $50. That's prizepicks.com, code OutKick. Okay, we got a bunch of sports news that's out there. Cowboys have fired Mike McCarthy. Mike Vrabel been hired by the Patriots. All of the wild card games are set. College football ratings awful for the Penn State Notre Dame game on Thursday. I have not yet seen, Adam, let me know if these come out. I have not yet seen Ohio State against Texas ratings for Friday night. Should be good, but that's not out, and the longer it goes without coming out, the more I think those numbers are not going to be particularly good either. But we start with all of the activity in the NFL, the 5 wild card games. What did we see? What did we learn? First of all, let's start with the first game. I was totally wrong on this one. Chargers dominated for much of the first half, but they were only up 6-zip. And then Justin Herbert started throwing interceptions, tip balls, not good breaks for him. Late in the first half, C.J. Stroud had a big-time play, a drive that ended up giving the Texans the lead. From there, it was all Texans. I thought the Chargers would win this game. Justin Herbert with the worst game of the season for the Chargers. And Jim Harbaugh, year one, I think it's fair to say, ends in a disappointing fashion. Chargers were favored in this game. They were the only road favorite. I believe I'm correct in that. And they couldn't get it done. And so Texans now going on the road against the Chiefs. We'll have lots to talk about there. Spoiler alert, I don't think the Chiefs have a lot to be afraid of in that game. You had Robert Griffin III come out, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he said something like, I hope Justin Herbert gets the same level of criticism that Dak and Lamar Jackson, is that who he said? That Dak and Lamar Jackson get all the time for not winning playoff games. And this was unfortunate race baiting from RG3, and he knew it, and it was weak. And look, the reason why Lamar Jackson is highly criticized is because he makes a ton of money, and he's a 2-time MVP, and he hasn't had the same success in the postseason that he has in the regular season. That's the reality. The reason why Dak gets criticized a lot is because he's one of the highest paid guys in the NFL, and he hasn't had a lot of success in the offseason. And he's also the Dallas Cowboy quarterback. Do you know who also got criticized immensely for not having enough success in the postseason when he was the Dallas Cowboy quarterback? Tony Romo. The reality is this, and I want to slam this home, and I hope this gets shared, and I hope it goes mega viral. So let me just say this. There is no racism in the NFL when it comes to quarterback. I don't think there's any racism at all in the NFL. But let's talk about quarterbacks for a moment. The best quarterbacks in the NFL, black or white, make $50 million or more, every single year now. And the expectation is when you make $50 million or more is to make the playoffs, to win playoff games, and to go to the Super Bowl. Even when guys didn't make $50 million. Do you know who some of the most criticized quarterbacks in the entirety of the NFL were? Number one in my life is Peyton Manning. Nobody has been ripped to the high heavens more than Peyton Manning has and was. Before he ended up winning 2 Super Bowls, any of you who were sports fans, the idea that Peyton Manning couldn't win the big game started in Knoxville when he was with the University of Tennessee because he couldn't beat Florida. And then it carried with him into the NFL early on in his tenure against Brady and Belichick. Manning would have great regular seasons, and then the Colts typically came up short in the postseason, and he was ripped to shreds on a level that I personally have never seen any football athlete ripped for not being able to win the big game. Okay? That's the reality. Second most ripped for not being able to win the big game in my life, John Elway. John Elway, now people remember him as going out on top by winning 2 different Super Bowls with the Denver Broncos. But prior to winning those 2 Super Bowls, everybody can tell you Elway's Broncos getting to the Super Bowl and losing, Elway was ripped to the high heavens for not being able to win the proverbial big game. And it's always typically the Super Bowl, right? Because the games that you win to get to the Super Bowl or to make it into the postseason or to advance in the playoffs are never considered big games unless you lose them, right? That's the challenge of the big game criticism is you never get credit for winning big games. You only get ripped for not winning the biggest game. And so any game you lose is a default big game loss. Any game you win, unless it's the Super Bowl, is not actually a big game. Those are the standards. Second most criticized, John Elway. Third most criticized, and he never won a Super Bowl, Dan Marino. People ripped Dan Marino for not being able to win a Super Bowl. Now, there's nothing to do with race. All 3 of those guys happen to be white. The standard of highly paid, highly praised quarterbacks in the NFL is you win a Super Bowl. And if you don't, you get ripped to shreds. They've allowed left-wing woke media in the NFL have allowed to get seeded this idea of, oh, black quarterbacks are held to a different standard than white quarterbacks. That was true in like the 1960s and in the 1970s, maybe a little bit in the 1980s. It hasn't been true in the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, and it's certainly not true in the 2020s. Everybody's held to the same standard. And what's interesting is, let me pivot here for a moment and go to basketball. Do you know who got ripped to the high heavens the most in my life for not being able to win a championship? In the modern era, it's LeBron. Until he won his first title with the Miami Heat, everybody castigated LeBron. Had nothing to do with race. When you are one of the best, or maybe even the best, and you don't win a Super Bowl, or you don't win an NBA championship, everybody piles on and says you can't win the big game. And there are some guys who have been ripped that never won the big game in basketball, right? In particular, Patrick Ewing and Reggie Miller and Charles Barkley, for instance. John Stockton, Karl Malone, guys who happened to overlap in the Jordan era and never won championships. And let me tell you something. Do you know, I'm old enough, do you know who used to get ripped before that for not winning a title? Michael friggin' Jordan. I'm old enough to remember, and a lot of you whippersnappers out there aren't, when Jordan couldn't get past the Pistons, everybody said, oh, Jordan, he's great in the regular season, but he can't do it when it comes to the postseason. He can't win a title. And that criticism burned deep for Jordan. People forget it because he won 6 out of 8. And a lot of you are so young, you weren't fans during the Jordan era. You don't remember the Jordan rise. You only remember the Jordan era Bulls dynasties. Jordan got ripped. This is really important, and I want you guys to think about it. Super talented people in sports have always been highly criticized because they're on a pedestal because of their excellence, and we expect that they should be the best because that's how American sports are defined. Are you or are you not the best, even if it's sometimes unfair in a team context? No one is being treated unfairly. Everyone who is one of the best in any sport and has not won a title is ripped to shreds. If Justin Herbert is being treated better than Lamar Jackson, it's because nobody thinks Justin Herbert is the best quarterback in the NFL. Nobody is arguing that Justin Herbert, to my knowledge, is the NFL MVP. Lamar Jackson is not being treated unfairly based on his race. Dak Prescott is not being treated unfairly based on his race, RG3. They're being treated the exact same as Peyton Manning was, the exact same as John Elway was, the exact same as Dan Marino was, and the same way that we treated everybody in the NBA until they won a championship. At some point in time, maybe it's already started, people are going to come after Luka really hard because he's a Dallas Mavericks star who has not been able to have a championship to his name yet. They came after Dirk back in the day. Stockton and Malone were the definition of it. So this is really important, and I hope we clip this and we share it widely. Every athlete, by and large, should be held to the same standard. And by and large, I think they are. And this whole narrative of, oh, this person's being victimized by what people in the media are saying about them. People arguing that you're the best and therefore you should have won a Super Bowl is not an indictment of you. It's actually a credit to you. It's a backhanded one because you're being held to the standard of why haven't you won a championship? But it's people acknowledging that in the regular season, you are great. Right now, the best analogy for Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen is Peyton Manning. In fact, Peyton Manning was ripped way more than either guy was. And so it's lazy narratives to just decide, oh, what's the skin color of somebody and claim that they aren't being treated fairly. And I hope that as Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson get set to play, that people in the sports media who are usual race baiters will actually be smart enough not to go with that angle. Because how can you argue that Lamar Jackson, who's already got 2 MVPs and may get a 3rd MVP, is being disrespected? By who? He was a first-round draft pick at quarterback. Tom Brady didn't get freaking drafted until the 6th round. It's common to not trust that somebody's going to be an excellent quarterback. But if somebody drafts you in the 1st round, how is that disrespectful? The whole analogy that Lamar Jackson has been disrespected is a lie founded on 1960s and 70s era football. I wish somebody disrespected me enough to make me a 1st-round NFL draft pick. I wish that somebody hated me enough to draft me to be the future of a franchise and give me tens of millions of dollars to play a game. All of this is made up. Maybe I need to write on this because sometimes writing resonates better than videos. Sometimes videos go viral, and that's why these shows are fun, but you don't listen to the whole argument in context. No one is disrespecting Lamar Jackson. No one is treating him unfairly. There isn't a single black quarterback in the NFL that has been treated unfairly, probably in the 21st century. In fact, Deshaun Watson is a perfect example that nothing matters other than does somebody believe you can win a championship for them. Deshaun Watson was accused by 30 or more masseuses, massage therapists, whatever you want to call them, of sexual assault. Now, he wasn't charged. He did settle those cases. And do you know what the Browns did? They gave up multiple first-round draft picks for him and guaranteed him the biggest contract in the history of the NFL, $230 million. Jameis Winston was accused of sexual assault, credibly, by a Florida State undergrad. And do you know what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did? Drafted him number 1 overall. Nothing matters other than, does a team think you can win? In fact, you can argue that that's actually to the detriment of the NFL. That your off-field behavior should have more impact on your on-field earnings than it does. But just in the last few years, while all these guys have been running their mouth about racism in the NFL, your Ryan Clarks of the world, your RG3s of the world that make a living race baiting to a certain extent, black quarterbacks have never made more money. And they've never been treated in a way which requires no punishment in any way financially for what happens off the field. The NFL is the ultimate meritocracy. All that matters is your individual talent and the likelihood that you're going to help a team win. And by the way, if that were not true, if the NFL was supremely racist, do you know what would happen? The teams that weren't racist would actually win more because they would be unlocking value that the marketplace at large doesn't see. You understand what I'm saying? You would find actually players that nobody else wants to draft or nobody else wants to hire as a coach because they're being undervalued based on their race. You would pay them less or draft them lower and actually make more money as a result. In fact, I can make a race argument that that's what's happened with white wide receivers. Cooper Kupp, nobody wanted him. LA Rams go out and find him at a low value, turn him into an all-pro. Look at what Bill Belichick did with white wide receivers. He's like, I got Tom Brady at quarterback. We can throw to anybody. I'm not going to expend a lot of draft capital on wide receivers because Brady's so good. I'm going to go find some white dudes that nobody else will draft or sign. Your Wes Welkers of the world, your Julian Edelmans of the world, and I'm going to plug them in, and they're going to have a tremendous amount of success. Nobody writes or talks about it. I did. But I actually think if you want to talk about racial discrimination that leads to an undervalued asset being able to lead a team to more victories, Bill Belichick and white wide receivers is probably the best example of the 21st century. Nobody believes in those dudes because of how they look. Belichick's like, wait a minute, they're an undervalued asset. I can plug them in with Brady. They can have great careers, and I don't have to spend the money on wide receivers that other people would. I can allocate my resources to make the team as a whole better. It's actually I think you could write an entire book, which is basically what Moneyball is, right? On how to find undervalued assets in football. To my knowledge, there hasn't really been a football version of Moneyball written. Belichick and white wide receivers would actually be a good jumping off point because I think that's what he did. So in a roundabout fashion, here's what's important. The NFL actually gets America right. It's the ultimate meritocracy. Nobody cares about anything other than, can you help teams win? Colin Kaepernick's not in the league, not because he took a knee during the national anthem. It's because he took a knee during the national anthem and he wasn't that good at quarterback. If Aaron Rodgers had taken a knee during the national anthem because he thought ISIS was being treated unfairly, Aaron Rodgers would have stayed in the NFL. People would have been mad at him, but they'd have been like, you know what? He's a really good quarterback. Patrick Mahomes could take a knee during the national anthem right now to protest anything. Patrick Mahomes during the national anthem for the Kansas City Chiefs opener could go out to midfield, take a knee during the national anthem, and say that he's taking a knee because we're not getting enough He's like the modern day Bob Barker. We're not getting enough cats neutered. We're not getting enough dogs spayed and neutered, like Bob Barker used to say at the end of Price is Right, during the national anthem, and he had to take a knee during it. And people would be like, oh, this is like, I don't really care. It's kind of dumb. But he's the best quarterback. Oh, we'll get over it. So long as your talent exceeds your problems, you're always going to be employed. That's what meritocracy does. Now, you can argue it's unfair. The actual criticism is better. Wait a minute. What message are we sending that Deshaun Watson can be accused of sexual assault by 30 different women and still get the biggest contract in the history of the NFL to play football? That's actually the more interesting argument that nobody analyzes. Because the message that we're sending then is all that matters is your talent. We don't care what you do. We don't care what potential crimes you commit. If you're really good at football, we'll find a place for you. That's actually the criticism that an intelligent sports media would make. Instead, it's, oh, the NFL's racist against black quarterbacks. And let me give you an example. Lamar Jackson. He was only drafted in the first round, and he's only gotten 2 MVPs. That's how racist the NFL is. Like, they have just made up an entire figment of your imagination. And the result is, unfortunately, actually divides a lot of sports fans. I cannot wait for the Bills to take the field against the Ravens next weekend, this coming weekend. That's a hell of a game. It may be better than the actual Super Bowl. You've got the 2 best performing quarterbacks, in my opinion, this year, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Now, the reason why I would argue that Josh Allen deserves the MVP over Lamar Jackson is Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is, in my opinion, the best running back in the NFL, better than Saquon. Because opposing defenses fear Derrick Henry taking over the game in a way they don't fear Saquon Barkley taking over the game. And even as talented as Lamar Jackson is, almost every defensive coordinator in the NFL this year has started off their game plan with, we got to stop Derrick Henry. No one, to my knowledge, has started off a game plan against the Buffalo Bills by trying to take away one weapon of Josh Allen. Lamar Jackson has better weapons. It's not a surprise that he had the best passing season of his career with Derrick Henry in his backfield. Oh, let's just compare what Derrick Henry did for Ryan Tannehill or Marcus Mariota. None of those guys have ever been as good as they were when they had, by and large, Derrick Henry to hand off to. Derrick Henry, in particular, for Ryan Tannehill, made Ryan Tannehill a $100 million quarterback. The Miami Dolphins, not exactly known for their success with quarterbacks, kicked Ryan Tannehill to the curb and gave him away for nothing because they didn't think he had any value. Suddenly, Ryan Tannehill has play-action capability with Derrick Henry, who can run for 2,000 yards, and every linebacker has to respect it. It limits the amount of coverage you can play, and then it allows Ryan Tannehill to have success down the field. Not to mention in the read option, which is what Lamar Jackson has done. Tannehill's an athletic quarterback. So I hope that we are going to be able to just sit back and enjoy the excellence of those 2 guys more than we are going to have to hear, every black person has to root for Lamar Jackson because he's been so discriminated against. And, Josh Allen, remember he said he's a Trump supporter. He's everything wrong with white America. Like, this is what they want to sell. It's a joke. The reality is these are 2 of the 4 best quarterbacks in the NFL. If you have a functional brain, in my always humble opinion, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow are the 4 best quarterbacks in the NFL right now. I think there's a substantial drop after those 4. I think you can argue about who's in that 5 to 10 range. lots of different guys. But those four, to me, are by far the most talented four guys in the NFL right now. So I got onto my rant early, but I hope that the nabobs of negativity who focus on identity politics over everything else and have destroyed the unity of sports and the meritocracy of sports by claiming something that's clearly not true, that black quarterbacks are being discriminated against and that Lamar Jackson is the king of discrimination, that hopefully, because of the power of OutKick and because we have put that out there, they're going to be afraid to make that argument. I doubt that they will. So there's my big rant. And I wish every sports fan in America had to listen to it because I think it would actually bring us all together, which is what I do. America's lovable sweetheart. Black, white, Asian, Hispanic. I want all of us to sit down at a buffet of football excellence and gorge ourselves, which is what I did. All right. What else do we have to talk about? I only got into one game, right? Let me hit you with a couple of more quick takes on the games themselves. We talked about the Ravens got the win over the Steelers. Steelers are in a tough spot. Ravens get to advance to play the Bills. I don't know what the Steelers do. Does Mike Tomlin come back? Do they try to re-sign Russell Wilson or Justin Fields? I think both these guys are free agents. Neither one of them seems like a difference maker that can get them over the hurdle of being, unfortunately, in the AFC North and having to compete 4 times a year against Burrow and Lamar. That's a tough spot. They're kind of in that interregnum where you win like 7 to 10 games, but you know your team has no chance to win a championship. And so do you burn it down, rebuild? The challenge here is Burrow, Lamar, Mahomes, and Josh Allen are still in their 20s. So you got 6-7 years at least of those guys still being really, really good in the AFC. And that's why I'm like a Titans fan. I'm like, we're fucked. I'm just going to be straight with you. Like, there's no reason for optimism. We're building a new stadium. I might as well just pick a new team to root for. Like, we got the number 1 overall pick. Okay, that's somewhat exciting. We don't have a GM. We're 3-14. Jonathan Hutton, by the way, should be the voice of the Titans. Poor bastard has to go out and watch the team lose for 5 years. Like, I don't know. We're not going to win anything. Steelers are kind of in that spot, and I think they're going to have to make some difficult decisions. Bills got the win. I talked about Josh Allen. Went downhill in a hurry for the Broncos. Bo Nix hit that 50-yard touchdown pass-ish to go up 7-zip, 31-0. They were never in real contention afterwards. I do think if you're a Broncos fan, you have to be happy with Sean Payton and Bo Nix. Far exceeded expectations in year one. Have a lot of cap space. Got rid of a lot of the cost associated with the Russell Wilson era, so I think there's reason for optimism there. Eagles got the win over the Packers. Packers have beaten bad teams all year, have not been able to get past good teams. Saquon's great. A.J. Brown is great. I mean, again, with Jalen Hurts, I question whether the Eagles have the ability to get past the Lions, but we'll see. And then the Commanders, what a performance by Jaden Daniels. Year one, you want to talk about a rookie quarterback going on the road, winning a playoff game. Baker and the Bucs were too sloppy with the football. Gave the Washington, I'm always going to call them the Redskins, a chance to get the win. And so we're set up tonight. I think the game, remember, is being played in Arizona. I told you with Kelly last week we'll be doing a fade on Thursday before I leave for D.C. for the inauguration. I think that we're going to get a Vikings win over the Rams tonight, and I gave you my prize picks out as well. Okay, a couple of other things that I flagged. Cowboys have fired Mike McCarthy, and Mike Vrabel has been hired by the Patriots. Love the Vrabel hire. Let me take these in reverse. I think you look at what he did with the Titans. It was crazy the Titans fired him. Vrabel was in high demand. Multiple teams would like to hire him. Creates a culture of winning. Knows New England well. 10 touchdown catches. Actually, a bunch of those touchdown catches, actually really impressive catches from Mike Vrabel. I was watching a highlight reel. Credit to him. I didn't know he had those kind of hands. I mean, to be honest. I knew he had the touchdowns, but I thought they were like fat guy touchdowns. He's actually got ball skills. And so credit to Mike Vrabel for getting that gig. I think they should have hired him instead of making the decision to go with Gerard Mayo, because I think they really didn't want Mayo, and they knew that Vrabel was the right choice. And I think Mayo was in a tough spot there. But to me, Vrabel, no nonsense. Statement from Jerry Jones, as I was just talking about the Cowboys firing Mike McCarthy. Throughout Mike McCarthy's tenure here, including the last several weeks, I've been very complimentary of the job he's done. Over the past week, I'm jumping around here. Over the past week, Mike and I had the opportunity to conduct a joint review. It became mutually clear it would be better for each of us to head in a different direction. I thank Mike and wish him, his wife Jessica, their family the best. They've been a wonderful part of our community. We will commence a search process immediately to hire the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Now, I don't know that he's going to do it. The coach that would create the most splash, I'm not saying that it's the best coach. The coach the Cowboys could hire that would create the biggest storyline, the biggest buzz is, and you know it, and I know it, Deion Sanders. Now, I have no idea how it would work out. But Jerry Jones is often willing to make the decision that would create the biggest possible buzz. Does Jerry, who does a lot of media availabilities and serves as GM, want to cede any of the stage to Deion? Who would Deion hire as an offensive and defensive coordinator? Those are real questions. But I do think Deion has answered the questions based on how he turned Colorado around about whether or not he's a good coach. I think the answer is yes. Deion has done a fabulous job at Colorado. Now, is Colorado built to sustain success long term now that Shador and Shiloh are gone? He hasn't recruited. He's gone to the transfer portal a lot. Those are valid questions. But results from where Colorado was to where they finished last year, Deion Sanders has been unquestionably a home run hire for Colorado. Could he do the same in the NFL? I don't know. But I can guarantee you that the Cowboys would be the number one story in the NFL if they hired Deion. Don't know how it would work out. Don't know how he'd work with Deion, with Jerry, how Deion and Jerry would work together. But it would be one hell of a story. Worth contemplating how exactly that could go, like the Patriots hire. I think it's fair to say that the Cowboys with Mike McCarthy had become stale. They hadn't taken the proverbial next step. Cowboys have not been to the NFC Championship game since the 90s. That's a long time. Again, I was talking about the history of sports, about Jordan and everything. A lot of y'all don't even remember Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin, what they meant for the Cowboys, star on the helmet, Jerry buying the team, building them to 3 titles with Switzer and Jerry Jones. With Switzer and Jimmy Johnson, double JJs. A lot of people don't even remember Jimmy Johnson's coaching career. They've just seen him on Fox for 30-some-odd years. So all of those things factoring in, I think, are very consequential. And that's going to be a fun story to cover. Okay, last topic that I want to hit today. College football ratings were awful for the Penn State-Notre Dame game. So far, they have not released the ratings for Ohio State, Texas, but that suggests to me they're not going to be that great either. What happened? Number of viewers for Alabama, Michigan last year in the Final Four, 27.8 million. Now, it was in the Rose Bowl. It was on New Year's Day, to be fair. But the argument, this is maybe something that I got wrong, the argument that I bought into and that I made to all of you was an expanded playoff would increase the overall viewership by the time you get to the end of the playoff. In other words, if you start with 17 million and you finish, you would have 35 million watching, that people would buy in and they would watch more. As is, look this up for me, Adam. I believe the viewership for Ohio State, Tennessee was roughly the same as the viewership for Penn State, Notre Dame. This is alarming, okay? Penn State, Notre Dame, great football game. I got it wrong. I thought that, let me just say, the worst decision made over the weekend that I saw from any coach was Steve Sarkisian running the pitch play on second and goal from the 1. Pitch it 9 yards back against a very fast Ohio State defense instead of bringing in Arch Manning and just running multiple potential quarterback sneaks. I think Texas would have scored. I think we would have had a tie game, about 3 minutes to go. Who knows how that's going to go? But both of those games were close. Both of those games were close. And the expectation was that the numbers would be growing. Penn State's a big brand. Notre Dame's certainly a huge brand. Ohio State's a big brand. Texas. Now, Ohio State, Texas numbers are not out yet. But what happened that I'm wrong on this? Because if you had told me only 17.8 million people are going to watch a game that goes down to literally the final second between Penn State and Notre Dame, comes down to a field goal by Notre Dame kicker Jeter, if you had told me all of that, I would have said, 25 million people plus are going to watch that game. Oh, that'll do just as well as the Rose Bowl. Two big brands. Everybody's been watching the playoff. Didn't happen. What's at stake here? I shared this on Twitter. Thousands of you gave your opinions. Here is what I would say. I think a big reason why is Thursday football game. This thing's been dragging on forever. The playoffs started on December 20th, but we had the playoff field set on like December 5th. So we now have been waiting for 6 weeks for the games to get underway. I think they need to start the college football season earlier. I think it would be beneficial if college football played the first couple of weeks of the year, not head-to-head with the NFL. And I think you need to get the Final Four on New Year's Day. Play both of those games on New Year's Day, and then a week later on a Monday, because the NFL takes over Saturday, Sunday. A week later on a Monday, you play the national title game. That, to me, is the best, or 10 days later, or whatever the math is. That, to me, feels like the best solution. And right now, that is not all coming together and working in concert. I love college football. I want college football to have the biggest possible audience. 17.8 million for Penn State, Notre Dame is bad. Also, could be that you really need the SEC involved. This is why I'm not particularly optimistic based on these numbers about Ohio State, Notre Dame. The heartbeat of college football's viewership is the South. I thought these numbers would be really big because a lot of the South has major snowfall that happened. I barely left my house over the weekend. I watched so many different games. A lot of Southerners, Texas, Arkansas, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina. A lot of y'all are similar to me. And that area I just ran through is the diehard region of college football fan bases. What's going on there that the numbers weren't very good, even in a super tight game between two big brands? I think that's ominous. Maybe 12 is not the right number. I'm going to write on this, I think, at some point long form when we get a conclusive total. The other thing I'll say is I think ESPN should be putting the games, playoff games, on ABC too. This is what they're doing with the NBA, is they're combining multiple channels, and that increases the number of people who watch. And I think it's a smart move because there still are a lot of people now that have cut the cord that don't have cable. And they might watch if they're flipping around and they see it on ABC, and they're not going to watch if it's elsewhere. So I do think that's a storyline worth following. By the way, breaking news, Drew Allar coming back to Penn State, as are both of the star running backs. So Penn State certainly should be a top 5 team. Evidence of this, by the way, too, I was saying go ahead and play for overtime late in that Penn State game against Notre Dame. I wasn't confident based on how Drew Allar had played that he was going to make a good decision back there, and he actually made an awful one. So good news that Drew Allar's coming back, but he's got to get better in his decision-making. I thought he would play better than he did. All right, I've been going for nearly an hour here. I'll be back tomorrow breaking down whatever happens in the Vikings game. Hopefully we'll get some numbers, the Vikings-Rams game. Hopefully we'll get some numbers on that Ohio State-Texas game. Again, 2 huge brands, Big Ten against SEC. But if it's nowhere near some of the numbers that we've seen before, and I believe it ranked 16th out of 21 playoff games was where I saw Penn State Notre Dame ranked, that's ominous because that suggests that a lot of fans are not tuning in. Maybe it's Thursday, Friday. We'll talk about more of that later. And we'll put a bow on the wild card weekend as well on tomorrow's program. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. I'm Clay Travis. This has been OutKick, the show.